All right, I got two people watching. Okay. Well, thank you for the two of you who are here. This is my smallest. Well, one just went away. This is my smallest Big Discussion 76 channel. And I know there's, at least in my network, one of the more prominent content creators is going live right now talking about something very, very important. So I'm going to power through this one and tune into what he's talking about. But let me go ahead and share this over on my original Big Discussions 76 channel, just for marketing purposes. If you're there and want to shout yourself out in the chat, please go ahead and do so. If you don't want to do so, you're under no pressure to do that. Let's see. So I'm going to give this a like from over there. I'm going to share it. For any of the aspiring writers, I am doing this entertainment and media channel right now. I have to get a more sturdy table because this is not a good look when you're typing stuff and you guys can see the background moving, but okay, it is what it is. So let me go back. Okay, I got a few more folks. That third person might be me over on my over on my original channel. Anyway, I'm gonna play this intro because when I cam up, as a matter of policy, I like to play the intro so I have an official introduction to this discussion. So I will see you guys on the other side. All right. Hey, hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I knew he was gonna call. My dad, Sprint T-Mobile. This is just an aside. This isn't related to what I'm talking about, but Sprint T-Mobile, they're upgrading the network, and everyone on my phone plan has to get a new phone. And my dad got his phone, and I think he changed the plan, so he just called me. Anyway, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76, Entertainment and Media. First of all, please like this stream/video. If you're watching it on the playback, please share it and please subscribe. If you want to throw something in a tip jar, that information is here. This is my smallest Big Discussions 76 channel, and this channel is far it's far from having a super chat or being able to participate in the AdSense program. But if you want a Cash App or if you want to donate to my Cash App or PayPal, that information is right there. So I'm back with another, this stream is going to be dedicated to the craft of writing. It's going to be another Stephen King offering. It's going to be from his book on writing, A Memoir of the Craft. The last one dealt with mastering your craft and pursuing your craft even if no one is flogging you, or even if no one is on you all the time to do it. Because he gave the parable, or he gave the example in this book of his son who wanted to play the saxophone like someone from Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, and they got the lessons for his son, but his son was only practicing during the times that were recommended by his instructor. He wasn't doing the extra work in his spare time, which is when mastery is achieved. So Stephen King was making the argument in that chapter that when you set out to become a writer, it should be something that you're doing naturally. It should be something that you're doing when nobody's looking, and it should be something that you're doing when nobody's forcing you to do it. You should do it because you're passionate about it, and because you love it. And that's when you organically create a master work. So that one went well. That one got pretty good reception. So I decided to come back and do that again, because I do find myself on this channel, and I watch a lot of things on YouTube, but in this channel, in this space, the media, the movies, the TV shows, the writing, I do find myself watching videos where George R.R. Martin, the author of Game of Thrones, I find myself watching his stuff, listening to him talk about how he created Westeros and how he created the characters and why he wrote that the way he did. I find myself watching Stephen King's interviews. 2 weeks ago when I did the last one, he was having a discussion with John Grisham. I find myself just watching videos on the creators and how they came up with their ideas, their writings, their how they directed the movies, in some instances how they created the soundtracks for the movies. So as a creative myself, I find myself watching other creators. So speaking of my book project, well, before I jump into that, please consider joining the Big Words LLC Newsletter if you're interested in following me both as a YouTube content creator and as a writer. There's a greeting here, and then there's the sign up button there at the bottom where it says subscribe. You have my promise that I won't give your information to a third party. Speaking of my father, he was very anal about that at one point, about not being put on chain emails, but this is something I foresee going out once a month, and just kind of picking the best parts of my entire vast video and written catalog. So speaking of my book, my first book, I have to sit down and figure out the final stages of it. Right now, I want to make the final edits to it, but it's here. And all of these links are below in the description box. The book is called The Engineers, a Western New York Basketball Story. It's a two-parter. This page here tells you the background of the book, the story. There are two parts. Part one, part two. That's one of the main characters in the book there, Coach Kenneth Leon Jones, right? And some of the quotes he used to tell us. And then there are videos that I've created on it over on my sports channel. I'm going to create some more here. And then these are essays related to it and interviews I did years ago with some of the notable basketball players and coaches from my area. So that's there. And I've also created and am in the process of creating promotional essays for the book. The first one was a tribute to a player named Kevin Roberson, who attended my high school. I won't give it away. That's there if you want to read it. The next one is a look back at our league, the Yale Cup, which was the high school basketball league in the city of Buffalo. Okay. And then the last one is a look back at the 1990-91 Hutch-Tech boys basketball team, which arguably was the, in large part, the inspiration for my book. I got to that high school. Well, I saw Michael Jordan hit the shot against Cleveland. And then my freshman year of high school, this team won the city league. They won the sectional, and they came within one game of getting to the state Final Four out in Glens Falls. And they didn't win that game. But I think the point is that as a young person, I saw that and I said, I want to do that too. I want to be like those guys. And that's where my adventure started. It was trying to reproduce what these guys did. And for me, these guys will always be royalty in my mind. There were other teams to win the city title and to win the sectional. And there were other teams that actually did go to Glens Falls. But for me, these guys, they were it. And they were something for me to chase after. And then that's the adventure. And it's an up and down adventure, but I have more promotional essays on the way as I finish this thing up and send it through editing. And then as I figure out how to self-publish it on Amazon. So I have a question here from Professor Toussaint Osborne. Thank you for being here. He said, how long did the first draft take to write? That's a good question. Well, I did use, keep in mind my piece, this is a creative nonfiction piece, and I do have a science fiction novel sitting in the box that's just begging me to get back to it. All the characters are in there begging me to get back to it and revise it and bring that to life. But I wanted to get this one done first because my coach, I wanted to get it done before he died, but he died about 3 years ago. But the first draft, I followed Stephen King's words in this book, which was to write. I think his rule was 1,000 words per day. I think it was 1,000 words, 500 to 1,000 words per day. That means you're just sitting down at the computer and you're just letting it rip. So that's what I did. And so for a season, it might have taken me 8 months to a year to get that first draft done. But I was going in the room and just writing down 500 to 1,000 words per day. And as I'll read for you right now, that's just getting the initial idea down. And then there's a process of going back and revising it and revising it and revising it to the final finished product. So that's a very good question. And that's going to be the basis for what I'm going to read for you guys or whoever watches this today. And again, keep in mind, that's just your rough draft. And so for a creative nonfiction narrative piece, what I did, because it's based in true life, in real world, true to life events, I conducted 36 interviews, and I also had newspaper clippings that I had to go back and anchor the story in. So with a day job, this took another 5 to 7 years. So this took a number of years, because it's not fiction. It's a non-fictional piece based on real life events and based upon real people. So it just took a while. But that's how long that first draft took. It probably took about ballpark 8 months to a year. If you have more questions, please let those rip in the comment section. This is an important conversation, especially for aspiring writers when you're first starting out, especially if your career is in something else. You might be a little bit shy about it, and you don't know which way to go, and you don't know how to do it. So this is very, very important. And also, this is on my writer's blog, Big Words Authors. So if you're an aspiring writer out there and you want to get yourself out there, and if you want to start to get your name out there, I take I'm taking guest content, essays, short stories, poems from others for a fee. I'll publish it up. But if you're an aspiring writer out there, reach out to me. My contact information is on this website, and you can get there through that link. Anyway, so what does Stephen King have to say about revising your work? And keep in mind that writers have different processes for creating their work and getting that first draft down and revising it. And also keep in mind, as I read this, Stephen King is saying this from the context of writing fiction, but there are things here that you can extrapolate over to writing creative nonfiction. Professor Toussaint Osborne says, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so let me read this. It's a few pages. I just thought this passage was worth capturing here on video. If you have more questions or comments, please leave those in the chat. So this reads as follows. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee here. So far, so good. Now let's talk about revising the work. How much and how many drafts? For me, the answer has always been 2 drafts and a polish. With the advent of word processing technology, my polishes have come closer to a 3rd draft. Keep in mind, at one point, writers were doing this on a typewriter. I can't imagine writing on a typewriter because with that device, you can't make any mistakes. And if you do, you have to either take the entire sheet of paper out or white over your mistake. But, today we have Microsoft Word. You should realize that I'm only talking about my own personal mode of writing here. In actual practice, rewriting varies greatly from writer to writer. Kurt Vonnegut, for example, rewrote each page of his novels until he got them exactly the way he wanted them. The result was days when he might only manage a page or 2 of the finished copy, and the wastebasket would be full of crumbled, rejected page 71s and 72s. But when the manuscript was finished, the book was finished by gum. You could see it in type. Yet I think certain things hold true for most writers, and those are the ones I want to talk about now. If you've been writing for a while, you won't need me to help you much with this part. You'll have your own established routine. If you're a beginner, though, let me urge you, take your story through at least 2 drafts. The one you do with the study door closed, and the one you do with it open. With the door shut, downloading what's in my head directly to the page, I write as fast as I can until still remain comfortable. Writing fiction, especially a long work of fiction, can be a difficult, lonely job. It's like crossing the Atlantic Ocean in a bathtub. There's plenty of opportunity for self doubt. If I write rapidly, putting down my story exactly as it comes into my mind, only looking back to check the names of my characters and the relevant parts of their backstories, I find that I can keep up with my original enthusiasm at the same time, outrun the self-doubt that's always waiting to settle in. Yeah, when you're a writer and you're creating something, yeah, doubt does creep into your mind because you don't know how it's going to be received and you don't know if it's a corny or a bad idea. The first draft, the all story draft, should be written with no help or no interference from anyone else. There may come a point when you want to show what you're doing to a close friend. Very often, the close friend you think of first is the one who shares your bed, either because you're proud of what you're doing or because you're doubtful about it. My best advice is to resist this impulse. Keep the pressure on. Don't lower it by exposing what you've written to the doubt, the praise, or even the well meaning questions of someone from the outside world. Let your hope of success and your fear of failure carry you on, difficult as that can be. There will be time to show off what you've done when you finish, but even after finishing, I think you must be cautious and give yourself a chance to think while the story is still like a field of fresh fallen snow, absent of any tracks save your own. The great thing about writing with the door shut is that you find yourself forced to concentrate on story to the exclusion of practically everything else. No one can ask you, what were you trying to express with Garfield's dying words? Or what's the significance of the green dress? You may not have been trying to express anything with Garfield's dying words, and Maura could be wearing green only because that's what you saw when she came into sight in your mind's eye. On the other hand, perhaps those things do mean something or will when you get a chance to look at the forest instead of the trees. Either way, the first draft is the wrong place to think about it. Here's something else. If no one says to you, "Oh, Sam or Amy, this is wonderful," you are a lot less apt to slack off or to start concentrating on the wrong thing. Being wonderful, for instance, instead of telling the goddamn story. Now, let's say you finished your first draft. Congratulations. Good job. Have a glass of champagne, send out for pizza, do whatever it is you do when you've got something to celebrate. If you have someone who has been impatiently waiting to read your novel, a spouse, let's say, someone who has perhaps been working 9 to 5 and helping to pay the bills while you chase your dream, then this is the time to give up the goods. If that is, your first reader or readers will promise not to talk to you about the book until you are ready to talk to them about it. I'm going to stop for a second. Professor Toussaint Osborne says, does each draft have a specific goal? Well, I know that for me, as I was going along crafting this, the first draft was kind of like Steven said, it was the initial idea, it was the skeleton. And then I had to go back and do all my interviews, and I was pulling box scores, uh, game summaries, game victories. I was pulling everything from the scrapbooks that my basketball coach created. So as I went draft by draft, I was infusing new information in, and then draft 3 and 4 was cutting things out to make the reading more efficient and accurate. But so drafts 1 and 2 were composing, and then drafts 3 and 4 were cutting things down and making it efficient and making it readable. And I actually took a writing advance, quote unquote, just before the pandemic, where I got more tips for writing. And it was given by a woman named Cameron Adams up in New Jersey. and she taught us a lot about how to cut things down. So that's what I would say to you. So each draft, yes, had a goal. The first two were to construct and infuse information in, and then the last two, maybe two to three, were to clean it off, make sure all the verbiage was correct, make sure that the dialogue was correct and coherent, and just to make sure the flow was there. So it usually takes me about 3 to 4 drafts of something before I approve of it and before I can show it to someone else. So that's different for every writer. But I do believe that as a writer, you have to approve of it yourself before you show it to someone else. Because when someone else sees it, as Stephen just described, they're going to ask you questions. They're going to start shredding it themselves. So you want to make sure you can defend your vision and you believe in your vision before you let it out. Sheed says, "We here. What's going on, Sheed? Thank you for stopping through. I'm just rambling about writing." So, okay. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee here. I'm going to minimize this. This may sound a little high-handed, but it's really not. You've done a lot of work and you need a period of time. How much or how little depends on the individual writer to rest your mind and imagination. Two things which are related but not really the same have to recycle themselves. That's true, at least in regard to this one particular work. My advice to you is take a couple of days off, go fishing, go kayaking, do a jigsaw puzzle, and then go to work on something else. Something shorter, preferably, and something that's a complete change of direction and pace from your newly finished book. I wrote some pretty good novellas, The Body and The Apt Pupil among them, between drafts of longer works like The Dead Zone and The Dark Half. How long you let your book rest, sort of like the bread dough between kneadings, is entirely up to you. But I think it should be a minimum of 6 weeks. During this time, your manuscript will be safely shut away in a desk drawer, aging, and one hopes mellowing. Your thoughts will turn to it frequently, and likely you'll be tempted a dozen times or more to take it out, if only to reread some passage that seems particularly fine in your memory. Something you'd like to go back to some excuse me, something you'd like to go back to so you can re-experience what a really excellent writer you are. Resist temptation. If you don't, you'll very likely decide you didn't do as well on that passage as you thought, and you'd better retool it on the spot. This is bad. The only thing worse would be for you to decide the passage is even better than you remembered. Why not drop everything and read the whole book over right then? Get back to work on it. Hell, you're ready. You're fucking Shakespeare. You're not, though. And you're not ready to go back to the old project until you've gotten so involved in a new one or re-involved in your day-to-day life that you've almost forgotten the unreal estate that took up 3 hours of your every morning or afternoon for a period of 3 or 5 or 7 months. When you come to the correct evening, which you well may have marked on your office calendar, take your manuscript out of the drawer. If it looks like an alien relic brought at a junk shop or a yard sale where you can hardly remember stopping, you're ready. Sit down with your door shut. You'll be opening it to the world soon enough. A pencil in your hand and a legal pad by your side. Then read your manuscript over. Do it all in one sitting, if that's possible. It won't be, of course, if your book is 4 to 500, if it's a 4 to 500 pager. Make all the notes you want, but concentrate on the mundane housekeeping jobs, like fixing misspellings and picking up inconsistencies. There'll be plenty. Only God gets it right the first time, and only a slob says, oh, well, let it go. That's what copy editors are for. If you've never done it before, you'll find reading your book over a 6-week layoff to be a strange, often exhilarating experience. It's yours. You'll recognize it at yours. You'll recognize it as yours. Even able to remember what tune was on the stereo when you wrote certain lines. And yet it will also be like reading the work of someone else, a soul twin, perhaps. This is why this is the way it should be, the reason you waited. It's always easier to kill someone else's darlings than it is to kill your own. I'm going to read 2 more pages and then I'm going to wrap up. If you're just coming in, please hit that like button. The likes are free and they always help. With 6 weeks worth of recuperation time, you'll also be able to see any glaring holes in the plot or character development. I'm talking about holes big enough to drive a truck through. It's amazing how some of these things can elude the writer while he or she is occupied with the daily work of composition. And listen, if you spot a few of these big holes, you are forbidden to feel depressed about them or to beat up yourself. Screw-ups happen to the best of us. There's a story of the architect of the Flatiron Building committing suicide when he realized just before the ribbon-cutting ceremony that he had neglected to put any men's rooms in his prototypical skyscraper. Probably not true, but remember this. Someone really did design the Titanic and then labeled it unsinkable. For me, the most glaring errors I find on the reread have to do with character motivation. I'll smack myself upside the head with the heel of my palm, then grab my legal pad and write something like page 91, Sandy Hunter filches a buck from Shirley's stash in the dispatch office. Why? God's sake, Sandy would never do anything like this. I also marked the page in the manuscript with a big scribble symbol, meaning that cuts and or changes are needed on this page, and reminding myself to check my notes for the exact details if I don't remember them. I love this part of the process. Well, I love all parts of the process, but this one is especially nice because I'm rediscovering my own book and usually liking it. That changes. By the time a book is actually in print, I've been over it a dozen times or more. Can quote whole pages, can quote whole passages, and only wish the damned old smelly thing would go away. That's later, though. The first read through is usually pretty fine. These bots keep showing up out of nowhere. Professor Toussaint Osborne says, do you have to use a story structure like Hero's Journey in nonfiction? I would say yes. It depends on what you're trying to write in terms of your nonfiction. If it's an autobiography, if it's a biography of someone else's life, if it's a chronicle of some sort. Yeah, I think you would still need some sort of structure to what it is you're trying to do and what it is you're trying to say. Because you can't write the entirety of someone's life. You're usually picking out certain parts of it, and you're usually chronicling certain years and certain events. So, yeah, I think some parts of the fiction process can be used in the nonfiction process. I hope that I answered that correctly. And I think you also want to think of whatever it is you write in terms of a book. You want to think of it in terms of a beginning, a middle, and an ending, or a 3 or 4 act structure. I think you do want to do that because that's how we read, and that's how we uh, consume literature. There's a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And sometimes there are multiple parts, like Lord of the Rings. You know, you have part 1, 2, and 3. Each has a beginning, a middle, and an ending, and then you have the overarching beginning, middle, and ending. Your question says, also, I would like to put some stories on your site. That's awesome. Okay, I want to encourage other writers to get a start if they're just getting their start, or if you're a writer and you want to get some recognition and collaboration, and then we could even talk about what you're doing here. So go to let's see, go here. Hopefully YouTube won't take this down. I'm dropping this link here. Let me just show it since you're interested. I created a guidelines page for submissions. This talks about it. I'll drop this in the chat so you can read it for yourself. Toussaint. I talked about length and genre, reasonable grammar, unsuitable content, visuals, a brief bio of yourself, and then payment. Some folks might be taken aback by payment, but the site, it does cost to run the site, and to take work from someone else and then publish it up, there is some work involved there. But I think I state here that it's negotiable. Whatever you submit, if you can't afford, I think right here I quoted $15 per submission, but that's negotiable. It could be there. You said you have it open in another browser. Okay, my email address is there. Please feel free to reach out to me offline. Okay, let me finish this up because we're at 38 minutes. And I also have some running around to do. Okay, a few more paragraphs. Let's see. During that reading, the top part of my mind is concentrating on story and toolbox concerns, knocking out the pronouns with unclear antecedents. I hate and mistrust pronouns, every one of them as slippery as a fly-by-night personal injury lawyer, adding clarifying phrases where they seem necessary, and of course, deleting all the adverbs I can bear to part with. Never all of them, never enough. Underneath, however, I'm asking myself the big question, the biggest: is this story coherent? And if it is, what will turn coherence into a song? What are the recurring elements? Do they entwine and make a theme? I'm asking myself, what's it all about, Stevie? In other words, and what I can do to make those underlying concerns even clearer. What I want most of all is resonance, something that will linger for a little while in constant readers' minds and heart after he or she has closed the book and put it up on the shelf. I'm looking for ways to do that without spoon feeding the reader or selling my birthright for a plot of message. Take all those messages and those morals and stick them where the sun don't shine. All right. I want resonance. Most of all, I'm looking for what I meant. because in the second draft, I want to add scenes and incidents that reinforce that meaning. I also want to delete stuff that goes in other directions. There's apt to be a lot of that stuff, especially near the beginning of the story when I have a tendency to flail. All that thrashing around has to go if I am to achieve anything like a unified effect. when I finished reading and make when I finished reading and making all my little anal retentive revisions, it's time to open the door and show what I've written to 4 or 5 close friends who have indicated a willingness to look. So that's it for now. So that's discussing the writing process, Stephen King's writing process, anything you write, anything you create, anything you compose. There's a first draft. Let me enunciate that properly. There's a first draft. And then if you stick with it, you revise it over and over and over and over and over again. And then by the end, you have something quality. But you have to make sure it makes sense to you before you show it to someone else, because once someone else sees it, there are people who read and consume things to understand and to enjoy, and then there are people who consume things just to rip them apart, so you want to make sure it makes sense to you first. What is the name of Stephen King's book? This one is called Stephen King on Writing, a Memoir of the Craft. And for any writer, whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction, I would recommend this because he's written so many books. Many have been adapted into movies. 2 of my favorite are The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, but also Pet Sematary and Carrie. And what else? Geez, what else did he do? He's done so much. So much has been adapted into movies from his library. And I just lost my train of thought. But regardless, you can see you can when you read this, you read his passion for it. You read his passion. You can feel that, and when you're starting off and writing yourself, and you don't know if you're going to be any good at it, you need something like this with encouraging words to help you go along and to keep you going, because you don't know if you're trained in another field like I am. You're setting off into uncharted waters. Even though, as a scientist, writing is a part of what we do, but scientific writing is different than creative writing. There are things you learn that can translate over and help you, but creative writing is there's a whole galaxy all its own. So you discuss, on this channel, I've gone over a Code of the Street. That's nonfiction. That's more of a commentary on inner city Black America. That's not. Oh yes, thank you so much for reminding me. So Sleepwalkers and Misery, It and Misery. How did I forget those? Especially Misery. I remember going to the movie theater to see Misery. I think it was in the 1990s. James Caan and Kathy Bates. Yep. And of course, It. That's a classic. So many of his books have been adapted into movies. So speaking of movies, I think that's what I wanted to say concerning this. I think there's an audience for talking about just the craft of writing, so I will do more of these. But I've been watching some other things on TV. Let's see, Snowfall just season one of episode one of season five. Season five of Snowfall just started, so I'm going to get back to watching that. We're just finishing up the reboot of the Wonder Years. Let's see what else. What else is on? What else? What else is I've been binge watching ER. That's from the 1990s. The 1990s, but I never watched it. I think it's brilliant writing and brilliant acting. George Clooney, Eric LaSalle, Steven. What's the guy's name? Hold on a second. Juliana Margulies. Anthony Edwards. Yeah, Anthony Edwards. So I've been binge watching that. I'm going to create something, probably some retrospective content on ER. I watched some really cool things on Netflix over the last 2 weeks. Something Shonda Rhimes creating called Creating Anna, something or other. The Tinder Swindler, the Fire Festival. I watched documentaries on those. And then next week, I don't know when I'm going to go see it, but the Batman premieres next week in the theaters. So me and my father did go see Spider-Man Far From Home in a packed movie theater on a Friday night. That might have been how I caught the Omicron variant. But I do plan to go see the Batman, but I will probably go see it when the theater is not so crowded. So I'm just saying this to say that I have much more content coming out, and I'm going to create content here also, promotional content on my book project, The Engineers, a Western New York basketball story. The content here will be more from a literary storytelling context over on my sports channel. Since it's a book about sports, I'm going to talk about more of the hardcore sports elements, and I'm going to tell more side stories about Coach Jones and the Yale Cup and being on the team and being inside the Hutch-Tech gym. So more of the hardcore sports stories will be over there. And then over on my original Big Discussions 76 channel, I'm going to tell more life stories related to the book. I think the first one is going to be a discussion about what happens when there are no men around, because that's an important theme of my book. I went through this journey with very little male supervision outside of the team, and it means something when you have a father or an uncle showing you things outside of the team structure. It means something when you look up in the stands and you see your father, or you see uncles, or you see mentors there watching you, cheering you on, and advocating for you. It means something when you have a male figure there to help you work through some of the inevitable difficulties you're facing with your coach, your teammates, and just with life. So look for more content here and over on those two channels. I see another comment. The All-Star Advisor is here. What's going on, Alonzo? I'm just finishing up. Alonzo, I'm still waiting on that blurb, your bio for the insurance piece. Professor Toussaint Osborne says, would you consider Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison? In terms of doing a book review, I have to read it first. So, and I am strapped for time right now. So maybe somewhere down the line. Toussaint also says, when will this book be available on Amazon? That's a good question. So right now, what I have to do is sit down and go over all of my final revision notes right? And then I want to hand it off to a editor so they can comb through it and make sure that it is grammatically sound from front to back. And then it'll just be a matter of putting it through the publishing process on Amazon, and then it'll be done. Part one will be out. So I'll have to gauge. It's interesting because a lot's going to depend upon how part one is received, because this is a two-parter. So if part one is received well, then of course I'll be able to easily bring out part two. But if part one is not well received, then, we'll see. But I've started, like I'm doing here, I've started the marketing process. So I've started letting people know that this is coming. That's the whole point for the promotional essays and the promotional videos. So just to let people know that this is coming, and to kind of stir up a buzz and an interest in it early. And also, there'll be people from, obviously, my family, but there'll be people from the city of Buffalo who will be interested in it. But I think for it to be successful, I have to convince people outside of my family circle and my Buffalo circle and my classmates from high school and other players from the Yale Cup. I'm going to have to convince people that I don't even know that this is worth picking up and reading. And that's when it will be successful. So I see a few more comments here. Alonzo says, Alonzo, no problem, bro. I have 1,000,001 things to do. Different aspects in life have a way of pulling on you. And at the end of the day, there are only 24 hours in a day. I'm sure you've heard that in the business circles. There are only 168 hours in a week. So that's all we've got. And we all have that. And depending upon what's pulling on you, and depending upon the number of things that are pulling on you, it could be hard to get the littlest thing done. Anyhow, everyone, I'm going to stop this. I have some running around to do. And I just want to thank those of you who watched, and those of you who, especially you, Professor Toussaint Osborne, reach out to me. My email address is on the site. And if you have something you want to put out as a writer, let's collaborate. That's one of the reasons why I started that site, in addition to marketing my own work. So let's talk. I think the email address is info@bigwordsauthors.com. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. I'm doing some other things this weekend over on my original channel. And I have some other stuff in the works for my science channel and my sports channel as well. So everyone, stay safe out there. If you're watching this on the playback and you want to throw something in the tip jar, that information is below in the comment section. Of course, I showed it in the chat throughout. I don't have a super chat over here because this channel is too small. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, please consider joining the Big Words LLC newsletter. This is below in the description box as well. And with that, as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Jesse Veal says, I purchased this book waiting on it to come. Are you talking about the Stephen King book? Alonzo says, salute to Jesse Veal. Okay. Well, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I'll talk to you guys the next time. Bye-bye.